Part 8. The subplot. Before I delve any deeper into the pointy end of this shit stain, I have to talk about this subplot.
I wish I could be as good a father as...
Don't you start again, you fuck. You want another seizure? Anyway, I've mentioned this fucking thing before, and I just need to put it in the ground once and for all. So to recap, Tenzin and his family go on a vacation for basically the entire series, and contribute almost nothing to the plot.
No one's fighting! We're going to have a wonderful time! Now that the president is in office and I'm not needed on the council, I can finally relax with my family and give Korra the attention she needs.
Tenzin eventually gets the glory of giving Korra advice for like a minute at the end of the season, but that's the entire payoff for his character and this arc.
Let go of your attachment to who you think you...
I'm talking. This subplot is indicative of a lot of the problems I've talked about before, so I'll just go through them briefly. The backgrounds are boring, and the characters feel like they're in fucking purgatory. It's the antithesis of show don't tell, with the characters sitting or standing, or walking around and just talking about everything. We don't feel any of what they're talking about, and with Bumi and Kaya being new characters, there's no real emotional weight to anything they're saying. We don't know them, they're not really developed besides bizarre attempts to have them talk about their childhoods, and we don't really go through any character-defining experiences with them.
Because you seem to have some grandiose delusion that we had a perfect, happy-go-lucky childhood. Guess what? We didn't!
If you recall this scene from Attack of the Clones, where we're given like a minute to establish that Obi-Wan and Anakin have been friends for years.
I haven't felt you this tense since we fell into that nest of gundogs.
You fell into that nightmare, Master, and I rescued you, remember?
Via dialogue in an elevator, it's akin to an entire subplot of just that. Why the fuck would we care what Bumi and Kaya think about Aang as a parent?
Oh, boo-hoo. Must have been real hard for you, flying around the world with Dad riding elephant koi all day.
Oh, so that's what this is all about.
That's what it's always been about.
Why the fuck would we care if Ikki gets lost?
Ikki? Ikki, where are you?
Or if Milo is training fucking lemurs.
Tenzin has a moment with each of his kids throughout the season, so when he's trying to teach Milo how to train Pokey, it's very much like the dog whisperer. Here's how you train an animal to do what you want to do, and I think that story is a little bit about him learning. Sometimes you gotta just let go of control for a little while.
This was our most filler-ish B story that we've ever had.
Well, at least they know they're making trash. Anyway, there's no reason at all for us to care about any of this shit. It's obvious that all of the narrative weight is in the Civil War plot and Korra's interactions with Unalaq, but for some reason they decided to divert attention to this bottom-of-the-barrel, family-bonding trash.
But that's why we still, we have Tenzin's kids as kind of even a younger entry point.
That's true. You can have babies watch this now.
Yeah, probably. We've had,
One of the major complaints about this subplot, besides it being just a huge fucking waste of time, is that it kind of makes Aang out to be a bad father.
Tenzin, your problem is you're exactly like Dad. He was so focused on saving the world and doing his duty, don't laugh, that he never had time for us.
This pissed basically everyone off because it's such a bizarre and flippant thing to put in your show.
I really wanted to write these episodes because I was excited about not just the Korra storyline, but more the Tenzin family storyline, which apparently was controversial, but whatever.
Why would you basically have these characters reveal at this point that the protagonist of the previous series had this flaw as a person, not tie it into the plot in any way, and also not show us any flashbacks to these events?
I guess, again, it's just that they don't want the image of that character that, that maybe they love, like, tainted in any way, but when have you and I ever been interested in presenting any of our characters perfectly? It was funny when a lot of the criticisms about Korra's, where her character goes in these first book 2 episodes, and, she's just so unreasonable. I think back to the middle of book 2 of Avatar, and Aang, when he lost Appa,
right.
He was unreasonable, and he was violent and irritable. And
Now, I'm gonna steal from ER here and call Hanlon's razor on this one, which is to never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. I'm going to give Bryke the benefit of the doubt here and say that they didn't actively attempt to make Aang out to be a bad father. I'm honestly convinced that their writing was so poor that they didn't really realize the effect that it would have on the audience and what they would take away from it.
yeah, I guess if people who really found this upsetting, I'm guessing they just aren't at that stage, because again, I'm the youngest of 5, and this is definitely what goes on. I love all my siblings, but
Yeah, to be clear, like, we never were trying to say, like, Aang was a horrible, terrible parent. It's more about how Kaya and Bumi, like, interpreted, you know, Aang's absence, because he was busy. He was a busy guy. He was being the Avatar, and then it was just kind of this natural thing where he ended up taking Tenzin around the world, because he was
the vessel for his legacy.
Yeah, he was the second to last airbender, I guess. And wanted to make sure his culture and, you know, continued on. So it came out of a place of, like, trying to keep his culture going, which was, you know, always something that was very important to him. You know, maybe he overlooked spending some quality time with the other kids at one time or another, but didn't mean he was, like, a deadbeat dad or something. Yeah.
The problem with this is that if you don't show us any of these events in the form of flashbacks, say, we're not really allowed to make up our minds for ourselves. It's basically like hearing people bitch about someone behind their back when you never saw what happened in the first place. And the strangest part about this is that Avatar is one of the best examples I can think of utilizing flashbacks.
I won't fight you. You will learn respect, and suffering will be your teacher. I looked away.
Yeah, and I remember we loved the design and the voice of the little Korra character so much from the first episode, but we were like, how are we ever gonna see her again without doing some flashback that probably doesn't need to happen?
I don't get it. What's the sudden fear of flashbacks? Some of the best episodes of your previous series were basically just giant flashbacks. What about Zuko Alone, or The Storm, or The Avatar and the Fire Lord, or even the Southern Raiders to a degree? Instead, we get to hear these middle-aged characters that we barely know talk about events 30 years in the past that we never see, basically shitting on the protagonist of the previous series, whose soul is literally murdered later in this season. Yeah, maybe this is malice and not just stupidity.
I'm always interested in new, fresh, like, pushing like new ideas and new characters and exploring new things, and I appreciate that the fans really get attached to the characters and they just want to see them for the rest of their lives, and I'm not like that. I'm more attached to the story. Once that story's finished, I love the characters, but I don't feel the need to go back. And so that's just where I am. I just want to move on, and that's why we did Korra. It was a new series of new characters in the world. And
so it's a new series with new characters, divorced from the original show as much as humanly possible. Okay, fine. So why on earth would you have a completely irrelevant subplot in which the children of characters from the original series bitch about their parents?
It was like, because they're going on this family vacation, and you're supposed to be spending quality time with the kids.
See, kids, he's breaking the chain of Aang's poor parenting. Boom. You can either just follow in the same mistakes that your parents made, or you could learn from them.
But they basically try to have it both ways. They try to have a series that's completely its own thing, with a totally new setting, radically different protagonist, story structure, and so on. But then they find ways for the original series to just kind of weirdly creep back in. It's kind of like they wanted to kill it off entirely, but they just couldn't. So they have to mutilate it instead. We never get a variety of pretty big answers about the original series, and they almost seem to intentionally starve us of information. Sokka is dead for no reason, and we get like one scene with him in season 1. Zuko and Toph are just kind of presumed dead for a while and are basically just ignored for most of the show. Katara gets almost no screen time despite having the opportune role as Korra's waterbending master. We never get that Roku and Aang relationship between Aang and Korra because she never talks to him and then he just fucking gets obliterated. Aang turns up in like half an episode of book 1 and he just seems like really fucking tired of everything.
Fine. Follow me, Twinkle Toes.
Tough. I'm 40 years old. You think you can stop with the nicknames?
Afraid not.
And then when the audience just kept on asking about what was fucking going on, they felt forced by popular request to wheel out the decrepit corpses of characters from the original series for one last victory lap.
Iroh.
Hello, Korra.
From the vine.
You know what? I would have been entirely happy with the series completely removed from Avatar if they didn't have the gall to basically take every chance they could to shit on the original series. And I totally get where they're coming from with not wanting to be bogged down in their old stuff. Completely understand that. But I mean, come on. You're making a very clear sequel. This isn't just something vaguely set in the same universe. It's a very direct continuation of the previous series. The main characters of Avatar directly shaped the world of Korra. A fair few of them are still alive, and several of their children have prominent roles in the series. It's weirder to intentionally ignore them, considering their prominence both in terms of the narrative and in regards to what the audience actually wants from your show.
Gran, I've been reading all about your old adventures. I've been dying to ask you, what happened to Zuko's mom?
Well, Denora, it's an incredible tale.
Gran, you look old. How old are you? And why is it so cold in the South Pole? Can we make a campfire and all huddle around it and tell scary stories and make snowmen?
You know, this is a funny joke until you watch the rest of the series. Again, you don't want to just have Avatar the Golden Years with like an Alzheimer's gang, but there probably should have been a passing of the torch of some kind, or at least a greater attempt to integrate the characters of the original series into Korra. Of course, they weren't forced to do any of this and they don't have to be beholden to the audience, but then it just becomes a question of why not? Why not have Aang as the Roku-like mentor for Korra? Why not integrate the time period between Avatar and Korra in a better or more fulfilling fashion? We get the fact that Aang dealt with Yakone at some point and later built Republic City or whatever, but is that really all that happened in the 70-odd years between both seasons? It feels like they intentionally denied themselves access to all of these rich characters and opportunities, basically for the stubborn reason that they wanted to do their own thing?
That's what it's always been about.
Anyway, this subplot also ticks off mature issues, which I would say middle-aged family drama fits into. Intention and Obstacle is terrible. I can't think of any specific examples for this, it's just shit across the board. And there's probably some spiritual demystification in there as well for good measure. Oh, there you go. Part 9. It's not their fault, I swear! Even though it actually is. One of, if not the most widespread argument to explain Book 2 being a piece of fucking cunt is that Nickelodeon, the company that produced Korra, fucked Bryke around and prevented them from making something good. Basically, the argument is this. Book 2 was greenlit while Book 1 was still in production. This meant that it was impossible to build in continuity, which is especially important considering how finalistic Book 1's ending is. There's a little more to this, but I'll just leave it at that for now. Regardless of whether Nickelodeon were involved in making Book 2 a piece of ass, the main thing I'm concerned about is the fact it sounded like it was a nightmare to work on. The creators explained this better than I could, so I'll just let you listen to it yourself. I'll be back, don't worry.
cool with it.
You don't have to pitch.
Yeah.
They greenlit it before we even met about it. Before we even knew about it, we got brunch with 2 of the execs, and they were like, so, the network's greenlit 12 episodes for you.
But then when Korra came around, you know, we really wanted to kind of well, it was after the
catastrophe,
the movie that shall not be named, and so we were kind of in a place where we were just like, you know what, we're gonna do this ourselves. Like we had, and at the time it was like, here's 12 episodes. You know, we had written a few spec scripts. We were like, you know, we can do this. We can write 12 episodes. We have the headway. Yeah,
it feels reasonable.
So basically, Brank were given complete freedom in making a 12-episode season, and after Shyamalan's turd of a film, they wanted direct control.
No, honestly, yeah. I mean, that's the blessing of Nickelodeon in a way. Is like they kind of, it is so different for them in a way that they have just sort of left us alone to do our thing, and we get occasional note here and there, but like for the most part, it's totally the show. I mean, I would say 99.5% the show we intended to make. You know.
What's interesting here is that many claim Nick interfered with Korra constantly and wouldn't let the creators do this and that, but it seems to be exactly the opposite of that. So basically, it's all their fault.
Let's be clear. I mean, I'll be totally fair and honest. Avatar ran from 2005 to 2008. The TV landscape was very different back then.
Yeah, totally.
And we were always a primetime Friday show. It was Friday nights, and it did really well. It didn't do SpongeBob numbers, but it did really well. But we did bump heads with the network a lot about reruns. They would never rerun it in order, and we said it's a sequential show. You have to rerun it in order, and they're like, your reruns just aren't doing really well. We think it's because it's not a comedy, and we said, no, it's because you have to run it in order. And for years, Mike and I said this, and then we had left the company, and we ran into this exec in New York, and he's like, guys, do you realize you have the #1 show on Nicktoons, the secondary channel? And we're like, oh no, we didn't hear. And he's like, yeah, we play it in order, and it does really well. And he goes, we had tried everything. We had put a bunch of episodes with a favorite character. What if we put all the earthbending episodes together? And we're like,
try everything.
And he's like, turns out when you play it in order, people watch it. And we said, yeah, we've been saying that for 3 years. And plus
Here's my hypothesis. Nickelodeon is run by retards. But they didn't massively influence the quality of Book 2. From what Mike and Brian have said, it sounds like Nickelodeon basically don't know what on earth they're doing with the distribution side of things, because Korra and Avatar are really weird shows for them. But in terms of the production side of things, they basically let them do whatever they wanted with the series. If Nick did indeed control everything and force them to make such a shit series, then why is it so experimental? With studio meddling, things tend to be bland and safe, not like this.
And I wanted to keep it small, like even smaller than the old series, and I wanted to be the running the room and stuff, because I felt by that point
that's great.
We had enough
It had been a few
experience,
years,
and I knew what I was doing for the most part.
Here's my pitch. Nick have nothing to do with Korra being bad as a show. The only thing they affected is how poor the ratings were, moving it to a death slot, and then moving it to digital. What I think the real problem was changing animation company. All Bright seemed to talk about in commentaries and interviews is how difficult Book 2 was.
That's Sokka, by the way, in case you didn't know.
Yeah, the painting didn't come out so good.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell.
That's why I'm telling everyone.
It's gonna be way better in the art of book, guys.
Yeah, oh man.
I guess maybe it was Nick's decision to make them switch studios, and I'm not really sure why they would have done that. Book 1 of Korra did great in the ratings, so maybe they rushed out a second season because they wanted more of it. But then why is the quality of Book 3's animation so good? I don't know. I'll agree that Book 2 had production problems and that Nick were possibly, but in no way were they definitely involved in creating these problems. But in the end, think about this. It was Brack that created Rava and Vatu, the Dark Avatar, this subplot, Bolin as an actor, and every terrible line of dialogue in this season. Ultimately, no matter how bad the circumstances were, they were responsible for this.
Lu and Gong are idiots. I hate them and their stupid mustaches.
Part 10. It all comes tumbling down.
Talk about famous. Everyone's heard of
Avatar.
Yes. I dare say your work today will earn you immortality.
How's that?
I will be in all the history books. My killer's name, no doubt, will live on also.
I'm going to try and be brief in this section because really there's not much I can say about it. The ending of Spirits is many things. Baffling, abrupt, absurd, but most importantly, hilarious. What it isn't is something that can be explained with mere words. It's transcendent, for better or worse. But mostly worse though. I mentioned earlier that there's not really any point in critiquing the super obvious problems with this season, but this stuff is so insane that it's impossible to ignore. So dark spirits were attacking the Southern Water Tribe at the beginning of the season.
Sir? What? Man overboard! Man overboard!
But that ended up not mattering at all. Unalaq was training Korra, but we never see this, and it makes no sense.
What can I say? I'm pumped up to learn that Unalaq spirit fighting.
The Civil War plot just kind of evaporated. The one flashback came and went. Varric attempted to assassinate the president and failed, and now everyone is gearing up to face Unalaq before harmonic convergence. Finally, the season actually gains a clear narrative drive. The various subplots merge into one, meaning there's little room for distractions like this.
The first thing you need to do as a trainer is establish dominance.
See, Avatar has a tendency to bank a lot of weight in its season finales, for better or worse.
Yeah, this is going into our usual crazy Avatar Korra style finale of 3 episodes of ridiculous action.
In the best case scenario, you get a super climactic conclusion that resolves a lot of the narrative arcs in a really short time span.
I thought you had changed!
I have changed.
They're not so much rushed as they are dense, and a lot happens in these finales. Because you have to resolve so many things so quickly, to be good, the writing in these episodes has to be razor sharp. They have to make the most out of every second of screen time they have.
Whatever you do to that spirit, I'll unleash on you tenfold! Let it go now!
On the flip side of this, you run the risk of not concluding a bunch of important narrative threads that you've shoved aside till the last minute. I've talked endlessly about the series finale of Avatar, but this is my main problem with that. You all know what I'm talking about with the Lion Turtles and the Rock and Aang's character arc, so I'll just leave it at that. Book 1 of Korra is probably a better example though. The season is largely starved of character development for all of its major characters, including things like Korra learning airbending and talking to her past lives. It procrastinates developing these things with an attitude of, oh yeah, I'll get around to that later. So So what ends up happening is they cram all of this super important stuff into 1 or 2 episodes, and because there aren't enough setups to accommodate this, everything falls into a big heap. Amon's backstory is just shoved into the second last episode and is really out of place. His entire conclusion with Korra equally so. Korra also randomly gains airbending. Amon and Tarlok are in a bizarre and kind of shocking murder-suicide scene. Korra also goes to commit suicide and then decides not to and gets her bending back and then sees Aang, and basically way too much shit goes on. In the end, it's a gambit that didn't pay off in the slightest. Spirits is this problem on fucking steroids. Whatever narrative threads they were trying to resolve are obliterated in one of the greatest clusterfucks I've ever seen. So here's what happens. The gang invade Unalaq's base in the south and eventually make their way to the spirit portal entrance.
You run into the portal. I'll try to hold off anyone who comes after you.
No, you're too hurt. You need a healer. Asami, can you take Oogie and my dad back to my mom? Mm-hmm. This is my fight now.
Korra, I love you.
I love you too, Dad.
Yip yip.
Whenever we get to the finales, especially, this book and then with book 3, like, we just keep adding more and more characters, and it's like, you want to give everyone, like, a cool moment and their big hero moment, but it's like, there's just too many people, and you have to sometimes be like, all right, Asami, sorry, you're out of this one.
Maybe you should stop putting so many characters in your show, you fucking hacks. Anyway, this happens.
We are now one. Now a new era for spirits and humans will begin, and I will lead them all as the new Avatar.
Well, I'm the old Avatar, and my era's not over yet.
I'll reiterate that there are people who claim Unalaq's character is some sort of lofty exploration of theocracy.
It's true that when Wan fused with Rava, he tipped the scales in her favor. But this time, I'll be here to level the playing field. When harmonic convergence comes, I will fuse with Vatu. And together we will become the new Avatar. A dark Avatar.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Anyway, I don't really need to explain how retarded this shit is. I mean, you can just look at it. And I still don't understand Unalaq's motivation in the slightest. So he's concerned with a loss of spiritual tradition.
It's a shame the Southerners have abandoned all connections to the spirits.
But somehow fusing with the spirit of darkness will fix this.
You think what Avatar Wan did was good? Driving almost all the spirits from this world? The Avatar hasn't brought balance, only chaos. You call yourself the bridge between the two worlds, but there shouldn't be a bridge. We should live together as one.
Why would you want to help Vatu escape? He'll destroy everything.
Don't believe everything you read. Don't believe everything you read.
So, you're going to remedy the supposed mistake that Wan made in closing the portals by fusing with the literal spirit of chaos and bringing 10,000 years of darkness to the world. What the fuck, cunt? If his problem was with Wan closing the portals, why doesn't he just have Korra open them and leave it at that? What's the point of turning into whatever the fuck this giant kite monster thing is? Plus, Korra agreed with him opening them in the first place.
With both portals open, our tribes will be united again.
The only reason she doesn't help him open the northern portal is because he randomly frames her father for kidnapping.
Tonrock, Senna, you are under arrest and will stand trial.
Trial? For what?
For conspiring to assassinate me.
And throws him in prison.
On the charge of treason, you are all found guilty. The punishment for this crime is death.
You can't do this! You take their lives and I'll take yours.
I know I promised to respect whatever decision you made, but I must ask you to reconsider. Show these men and my brother mercy.
So Unalaq told you what to say?
Yes, every word.
If he didn't do this, she would have gladly opened both portals with no problem. Also, why the fuck does he think the portals being opened and the spirits roaming free is a good idea? With the little we see of one's period, spirits are basically wild animals that force mankind to live on the back of enormous turtles.
Get off me! Get off me!
If Rava being free and Vaatu being locked away is imbalanced, how is Rava being dead and Vaatu being in control any different?
Don't believe everything you read.
Oh no, it's retarded.
Wait, didn't Vaatu corrupt these humans to attack the spirits? Didn't he corrupt the spirits to have them attack the humans?
We are protectors of the forest. We won't let you burn it down.
It's Vaatu. He's growing stronger, using their anger to turn them to his side.
Isn't the entire point that he creates disharmony and chaos, and this guy that wants harmony between the spirits and man?
If the water tribes were at war, the other nations would take sides. The dark spirits would thrive off this negative energy, and the world would be thrown into a battle between spirits and man that would be catastrophic.
Is going to fuse with this thing. What?
Congratulations, everyone. You've all got front row seats for the beginning of the New World Order.
So Korra and Unalaq duke it out for a while before this happens. Like, what were they thinking? In what universe is it a good idea just to go, yeah, let's delete the souls of the previous characters. Let's just kill the main character of the previous series in like a 1 second flash on screen. Like, and really for what reason? Like, what, to establish that Unalaq's, like, really evil? Like, again, maybe they should have done this at the start to, like, if they were going to do this, not that they ever should have, maybe be like, hey, let's, you know, set him up to be this crazy evil guy. Don't do it at the end. He's already about to fuse with Satan. I think we kind of get the picture. He's probably not the best.
Now, 10,000 years of darkness begins.
See, I can't even be mad anymore. I've seen it so many times that it's just like...
Why are we still here?
You know that sequence in Berserk? Spoilers. Where Griffith's in the, like, torture chamber, and the guy's been torturing him for, like, months, and he's just, like, shoves, like, needles through his body, but, like, dodges his, like, internal organs just so he can keep doing it. That's kind of like this show. You know, every time I rewatch it, it's just slides another one in. You know, just... Ah. It's a shame because it's like, it's over ambitious as opposed to under ambitious. There's a word for that.
So what we're talking about is sometimes we get a little, you know, you can get too ambitious in TV animation. You can, you know, come up with a neat idea and there's nothing wrong with the idea. It would be exciting, but it's just maybe too difficult to pull off for the time and the budget. in the amount of time we have for revisions, but
it's like they're going to be on these big air tornado, water tornado things floating around. There's a big portal, and it's like the Aurora Borealis in the background, and it's big landscapes, but it sucks ass because you don't care about any of it. It's exactly the George Lucas problem. You can have the biggest fields in the world, you can have the biggest green screen set pieces, but when it comes to, you know, dialogue between two characters, the motivations of characters, you lost it.
This is the Tree of Time, and the legends say that its roots bind the spirit and physical worlds together.
What legends? You fuck.
I have read that long ago, the ancients would meditate beneath this tree and connect with the great cosmic energy of the universe.
How do you know this information?
These are my memories.
Oh, crazy how your memories are taken from the third perspective point of view. This is a minor nitpick. When they do flashbacks to the characters' memories, and they're obviously just taking scenes from the show, don't blame them, because obviously otherwise you have to animate all this shit from, like, you know, their POV. It's like, oh yeah, crazy how all your memories are from outside your own body. Oh yeah, I remember this thing from the third person, from behind me, and then it was cutting, because people's memory, you know, when they think about things, it's like, oh, I was talking to this guy, and then it cut to here, and then it cut to me, and then it cut to behind. Crazy how nature do that, basically.
And like this was one where like the animation came out pretty cool, but like there was something that like the episode didn't feel like cool as a finale. But then you did the music and it tied it all together.
Wow, I didn't know that. You felt that way? That's awesome.
I did feel that way.
It's time to take back the physical world.
No, I was actually really proud of it as a finale because it is such a cerebral, kind of heady episode, and I dug it.
Jar Jar is a key to all this.
Yeah, and I think you, Brian, you described it as like, it's like an experience. Like you could sit around and like, you know, nitpick it, and I'm sure there's stuff that maybe doesn't make sense on the like physical plane, but in the spirit plane, totally makes sense.
So I'm not doing like a straight up American movie anymore. The tonalities are changing. You know, I always had a European sensibility to my movies, so the pacing is always a little bit off for them, you know, and it feels a little stilted, and they need more electricity and all that stuff. And I'm like, this is the way I think of things, because you know, Hitchcock and Kurosawa and Stanley Kubrick, these are like my teachers.
So I just love this stuff. Like, I mean, I'm a big Foodie Cootie fan, and you know, the creator of that, he didn't really want the series to make sense. He's like, he just wanted people to watch it. He said, like MTV, you should experience it and feel it on an intuitive level, an emotional level, and like kind of a spiritual level. And that to me, that's what this crazy battle, you know, is. It's kind of symbolic.
Yeah, definitely.
So it could be a little bit of that there's just a little bit of cultural difference, because like, you know, I'm just like on this movie, like I'm very used to kind of getting on a plane from the U.S., having been savaged by them, and then going to, like in this case, I went to Japan next, and then they're like, genius!
Well, it makes a sort of dream-like logic in a lot of ways, and yeah, I don't know. I'm into that kind of stuff, and
It's stylistically designed to be that way, and you can't undo that, but we can diminish the effects of it.
It's always a delicate balance, making it clear enough and sort of making an intuitive logic, you know.
It's bold in terms of jerking people around, but I may have gone too far in a few places.
See, because the thing is, it's so... There's nothing I can feel. It's so impersonal, and the scale doesn't help. The scale makes it worse, because it's just giant fireballs getting shot at a big red monster.
Like, the animation was cool. I was like, oh, this is a cool battle between two giants. But it was like, I wasn't feeling the emotions behind it necessarily, because they are so otherworldly and not like our normal characters fighting, you know?
The main thing is, it's extremely boring. It's just like what the fuck is this? Like, I think we're all pretty across this. This is fucking retarded. Can you imagine writing this? Giant Unavatu spirit bends the water to giant spirit blue Korra. Turns her purple.
With you out of the way, I will be the one true Avatar.
Why are we still here?
Saw some different theories of people had of what Jinara was doing. And the truth is, I don't know exactly what she was doing, but the idea is like she did gather some sort of spiritual energy that kind of helped, you know, trigger Rava's, the tiny little sliver of Rava that was left in the Unavatu guy.
She was sort of a vehicle. Like she delivered it from the spirit world, and it was kind of resuscitated Rava as this little heartbeat.
Yeah.
You know.
But she wasn't like gathering pieces of Rava and like reformed her or something.
Oh,
which seemed to be some theories.
But you know what? Maybe in a way she was.
But that's the thing.
It's all connected,
it's open
man.
to interpretation.
It's all the light energy. We're all one, you know.
Yeah.
It just keeps tumbling down, tumbling down, tumbling down.
And I just love glowing blue Korra. I don't know.
That's really cool.
It's over.
Not yet. You've still got about 5 minutes to ruin everything.
Humans and spirits must learn to live together.
And choose will be resented because of our leading role, but without that leading role and without that transformation,
spirits
will not survive.
Thank you guys. This was one of the greatest experiences of my life.
Really? Book 2 was one of the worst experiences in my life.
I'm talking about the whole of Korra.
No, it's
Part 11. Change. So, Book 2 is pretty bad, but Book 3 is brilliant. No shit. I'm not going to spoil anything major from this season because it's actually worth watching. If you have not seen this yet and don't want to know anything about it, including the premise and so on, I would urge you to skip to this time code and then later watch it. Book 3 is very correctly named Change, because practically every major issue in Book 1 and 2 is fixed to a certain extent. I mean, the first episode of Change is even titled A Breath of Fresh Air, and it genuinely feels like it. It really feels like an entirely different show made by different people. Spirits is cold and weird and feels like it was made by fucking aliens. Change, on the other hand, is hype as fuck. Genuine emotion is pumped back into the show, and there's a fantastic sense of momentum and tension. Nearly every element becomes significantly better. The visuals pop, not just in fight scenes, but there's a return to the clever visual storytelling of Avatar.
Welcome to Her Majesty's Army, 1st Airbending Regiment. From now on, you live to fight for the Earth Queen.
Even the first episode, arguably the weakest in the entire season, demonstrates this. I love this shot of Tenzin staring at Aang and his legacy. Very nice. Plus, you get simple characterization like this.
Ow!
Police?
I want to clarify that these examples are nothing special, and there are better ones later in the season, but the point is that this change is evident from the first moment of the first episode. This is the sort of simple, effective storytelling that Spirits was seriously missing. Also, in the field of visuals, the fight choreography and composition in Change are fucking beautiful. Again, this is evident in the very first episode with Zahir's escape. Everything is very clear, and the action feels close and personal. Plus, the animation is fucking great. Movement is dynamic and unpredictable, and there's a return to bending feeling like an actual martial art. And some of the detail in these fights is just beautiful. Look at the way that Zahir stumbles here, or the way that Kaya is briefly distracted by ice hitting her arm. But that's not the reason why the fights are interesting in Change. The fights have weight to them because Korra and her gang, and Zahir and his gang, have very clear intentions. You know how Spirits is a meandering, unclear mess that changes direction on you when you didn't even know what the destination was in the first place? Well, Change is the opposite. There's a return to that fantastic and integral sense of adventure present in Avatar as we finally leave Republic City. Sure, I'm not a huge fan of rehashing Avatar locations like the Siwong Desert, Ba Sing Se, Misty Palms Oasis, and so on, but they're handled in a fresh enough way that it's really not too bad.
Wow. Now this is more like it.
I'd like to highlight that even a simple minute-long scene in which the Red Lotus discuss their plans is set in a fucking cool location. You could even draw parallels between the new growth of the Spirit Vines destroying the foundation of this building and the Red Lotus' desire to topple world leaders and institute anarchy. And I mean, just look at this shit. Zhao Fu is cool as fuck. And then there's this baller fucking destroyed pyramid prison thing. Excellent. Everything just feels wider, and I think it literally is. Because Spirits is heavy on dialogue and it's shot blandly, you just get crammed in with these characters in mid-shots and close-ups. On the other hand, we really pull back in Change and look at the bigger picture of the world. There's constant sweeping shots of new landscapes, and when we return to dialogue, the new locations allow for some interesting opportunities in the cinematography.
Whoa, hey! I think I could use a break. You letting off steam is starting to hurt. A lot.
This could very easily have been a static shot, but they actually give the characters something to do. You know, it actually adds something dynamic to the scene. Change is a great example of doing what you can with what you have and making something genuinely good out of this. Ironically, Reich had far less to work with here than they did with Spirits. You think continuing the series when Korra already has the Avatar state is hard? Try making a season after Korra fights Satan, permanently loses her connection to the past lives, a billion characters are introduced, the spirit portals are open, I guess they exist as well. Plus, it turns out that the Avatar is actually just the Jinchuriki of a fucking carpet. The narrative is half set in stone at this point, so it's not really possible to retcon everything or pull some crazy twists. So they do the best with the material they have. The spirit portal staying open is kind of dumb because the entirety of season 2 is kind of about the ramifications of this, but we really don't know what this actually entails. We barely see the spirits living with man in Wan's era, and there's not really a sense of the gravity of them being open or not.
This is your prison now, and I will close the portal so no human will ever be able to physically enter the spirit world and release you.
Considering Spirits is about, spirits, maybe the portals should have been opened at the start of that season, and the rest of the story being Korra dealing with what this entailed, and then deciding whether to keep them open or not. After seeing Spirits so many times, I still don't really understand what leaving the portals opened or closed even means. Like, this probably should have been the most clear thing in the entire season. Anyway, Change basically avoids dealing with this as much as possible, and rightly so. I've already talked about how the spirits were retconned into glorified Pokemon, and having another season with these fuckers is out of the question. Instead, some non-benders are suddenly granted airbending as a result of harmonic convergence and the portals being opened, and Korra sets out to find these new airbenders with Tenzin and restore the Air Nation. Simultaneously, Zahir, the head of a criminal organization named the Red Lotus, who attempted to kidnap Korra as a child, is also granted airbending and escapes his prison in pursuit of her. I did say that we don't really understand the ramifications of the portals being opened, but this is one of the better ways of doing this. Positive in that there's new airbenders, and negative that this power has been granted to a terrorist. The fact that change builds itself around this is clever, but it doesn't really excuse Book 2 in this regard, considering that Korra made the decision without having any idea that this would actually happen. At the same time, I actually don't really like this decision. It's pretty cheap to just randomly gift airbending to people, which feels like an ass pull already, and it undermines Aang's struggle to restore his nation via his cock. In saying that, it's basically the least egregious way to handle the ramifications of spirits, and does lead to some genuinely interesting places. This is the only point in which change is legitimately burdened by the continuity of spirits, and after this, it's free. I can't emphasize enough how much this blows the "they didn't know they were getting a second season" argument completely out of the water. If you can do this shit for change, there is absolutely no reason that spirits couldn't have been good. Anyway, another thing that works in change is that the characters are used economically, in that they fulfill a genuine purpose in the story. Yes, there's still way too many of them, and they introduce even fucking more, but overall, it's actually handled well. Korra has always been less focused on characterization than Avatar because it has more of an ensemble cast. More characters means less depth for everyone involved, and a greater focus on these characters being pieces in a larger plot. This doesn't mean that you can just forget about characterization or something, it just means that the narrative has to pick up the slack, and a lot of the characterization must come as a result of this. If your plot is weaker, as Avatar's is in the first season, you can always fall back on the great character interactions and depth.
How could they do that to me? They wanted to take away everything I knew and everyone I loved!
With Korra, the plot is so paper thin in the first 2 seasons that there's nothing to fall back on, only highlighting the weakness of its already shallow characters. With change, keeping the characters more superficial actually seems like a deliberate choice, because there is a much greater focus on plot and action. The narrative carries this season extremely well, and the characters are as developed as they need to be. No one really overstays their welcome, and they're used in a very precise fashion. Korra is actually somewhat likable, doing some genuinely heroic and selfless things, which feels less like character growth and more of a retconning of her being a psychopath. I'll reiterate that having a character be morally bad is not in itself a poor decision, and bad characters are some of the most interesting. But you have to have a pretty good justification for your main character to do shit like this.
What do you want?
It's not about what I want, it's about what Naga wants. And she'd like you to let my father out of prison.
So it's probably better to just have your protagonist be a decent person if you don't know how to do the alternative. So Korra is actually bearable this season and works far closer to how I think she was intended, a buff, snarky meathead who's kind of a lovable idiot, as opposed to someone with a severe antisocial disorder. Bolin's autism is toned down a ton, and I feel like he's given a lot more room in terms of humor.
I gotta say, I love being a part of this family. You got the grumpy dad, the wacky uncle, the put-upon mom, crazy kids. Oh, this is great.
Mako is still flat as a brick wall, but this is played as a joke more often than not to decent effect, which is actually kind of clever.
As you were. Ladies.
He finally fulfills his role as the genuine voice of reason in the group, instead of being this weird guy with confused motivations who just kind of sits around in the background. Asami is still really plain, but she's actually given some stuff to do and moves beyond being a glorified upper for the group. Recurring characters feel a lot funner and are strategically placed as opposed to just waiting around in the background. Eska and Desna, whatever their names are, show up for a brief scene and are used well. Varric is great in the tiny amount of screen time he's given, and there are some other characters that return that I won't spoil, but I generally like the handling of. So overall, it's fantastic. As I said, I won't spoil the rest of the season, but the ending in particular is so fucking hype, it's unbelievable. There's a couple of scenes in the last 4 episodes, and particularly in the last 2, that are extremely well crafted and mind-blowing. All in all, Change is a very well-crafted, fun, hype treatment of Korra. It's the first time I can actually experience what was intended of books 1 and 2, but was simply missing.
Air nomads don't have armies, Milo.
But maybe there will be enough to fill the temples again.
But it's not like it doesn't have some problems. The main issues come down to this. The season is kind of slow at the beginning, there are still way too many characters, and the new ones that are introduced are either flat or they're just there to set up stuff for book 4.
You can call me Kuvira.
Oh no! This isn't terrible, but it still distracts from stuff we should actually be focusing on. Again, there's more subplots with characters we really don't need to know about. Lin gets a flashback episode that's decent in its own right, but detracts a little from the flow of the narrative, and for some reason they give Tenzin another solo episode where he learns leadership or something. I'm not sure why they keep doing these, because they don't add much to the story at all. The Red Lotus are great, but they could do with a little more depth than we get. I think they feel underdeveloped because they're actually an intriguing group and we want to know more about them. In saying that, I think they're actually handled pretty well, and they're by far the best executed villains in Korra. And that's about it. It's not Avatar, and it's not trying to be. It's genuinely good, and it's good in its own way. But here's the thing I really don't understand about the way Change is judged. People seem to either religiously defend Change alongside all of the other seasons of Korra with little to no rationale, or they decry all of Korra with one fell swoop. I can see why this happens, because humanity is a quagmire filled with sheeple, but it doesn't really make sense to me. If you watch Spirits and then immediately follow up with Change, the shift in quality is so drastic that I'm not sure how you can claim it's equally as bad or equally as good as the previous 2 seasons. Anyway, if you get anything out of this entire video, it's that you should watch Change. If you've already seen it and you weren't too huge on it, then there's probably something wrong with you. I don't know, just rewatch it or something.
But I promise you, things will get better if you just give it a chance.
You know, originally in the video there was going to be this whole like subplot where as it went along and the more and more I edited, and the more and more I edited and the more and more I did, I got kind of like crazier and crazier because I was going insane from watching the show. And it was going to be this whole thing I wrote out. And then it turned out that the video got to like, I don't even know how long it'll end up being, but like roughly 4 hours. And I was like, yeah, how about we don't include that? The thing was, I kept on growing my hair for the like 5 months I was editing it, and I was still entertaining that idea. So here we are. Thought this might be a nice rolling vista for you. Just take you away from the pain of that footage. Because what is it? You made it this far. This is what you get. This is your reward. This is my reward. I thought this might be a nice setting to do the whole kind of conclusion to the fiasco of this video, which accidentally turned out to be what's probably the longest edited review of this sort on YouTube, I guess. I don't know if I should be happy with that or get like an autism diagnosis or something. I don't know. The second season is a piece of shit, but it's like, I've seen it so many times and I've worked on the video for so long that I started out annoyed. I started out like, grr, fuck this, it's bad, I'm so angry. But now I just don't really give a fuck. Like, yeah, it sucks ass. It sucks major ass. Like, it sucks like turbo ass. It can eat my ass. Plenty. Get a good dinner. But in the end, it's like, who gives a fuck? It's a fucking children's cartoon. Like, the fuck? It finished airing like 4 years ago. Like, who gives a shit? Fuck it, you know? I get the feeling like Avatar is going to be one of those shows that kind of has a bit of a legacy, you know? Like, people will still care about it and they'll still reference it for years. People will be like, oh yeah, I remember that. That was good. I like that. It's kind of like a nice, you know, a bit of a nice actual yin-yang between the two shows, because, you know, I've appreciated Avatar for a while. I think I could pretty like firmly say it's like kind of influenced me in terms of filmmaking. It's just such a solid piece of media. Like, I'd pretty happily like call it a masterpiece. It's obviously flawed, but masterpieces, you know, they are flawed. But digging so deep into Korra as a show has just given me this whole newfound appreciation of simply like how good the show is on so many different levels. That's the weirdest part, is looking at this piece of shit has made me enjoy something I already enjoyed just, you know, so much more than I did before. It would be nice if it wasn't a piece of shit, obviously. Like, that would be the preferred version, but you can really tell, like, listening to the commentary that the creators, they tried. Like, that sounds like they had a shit time on the show. I mean, I can't hate them. I mean, they gave me, like, one of my favorite shows ever. Debating whether or not they were the real creative force behind it, or whether it was a kind of George Lucas, Star Wars, everyone else made the film for him sort of thing. They still came up with the idea, they still ran the show. Hey, we got one thing, that's fine. So I don't really hate him for that, I guess. Alright, so the clip probably cut off weirdly here because basically the wind picked up and all of the audio was ruined, but also the rest of what we shot was kind of bad anyway. Anyway, the main thing is I'd like to thank everyone for making it this far, which is almost 4 hours in, so that's pretty impressive. I don't know if I explained it particularly well in the video, but the whole thing was meant to be, there was going to be like a kind of subplot thing of me where I'm kind of like getting progressively crazier as the video is going on because it's so long and the show is so bad, and it's kind of like me like having a mental breakdown, and I eventually have a kind of redemption scene where I like shave all my hair off, which was meant to be like the scenes in Avatar where characters do that, but then I didn't do that, so you just get this at the end and it doesn't make any sense and it's very strange. So yeah, I might have I might have gone too far in a few places. This part was also meant to be about like yin and yang and how that kind of relates to Avatar and Korra, with how like Korra is kind of the dark and Avatar is the light, and even though it sucks that Korra wasn't as good as it could have been, it is nice that you can at least appreciate Avatar more now compared to Korra, and that they do actually balance each other out nicely, and you know, it's taught me a lot about what not to do in filmmaking and what not to do in storytelling, so you know, I guess it wasn't a complete waste is the point. Yeah, I probably won't make content on this show again for a while because I'm just a little bit sick of it. Yeah. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.